What's going on, everybody? Not your average Josh back here for another movie review, and today I am reviewing the new movie Mufasa, The Lion King, coming out this weekend, the sequel to the 2019 CGI remake of the original 1994 film, The Lion King. And I do appreciate anyone who is watching this. As I say at the beginning of all my videos, if you want to support this channel, hit that like button, leave a comment down below, and also hit the subscribe button as well. Still a small channel here, just growing it slowly but surely, just having fun talking about movies and TV shows. It's my passion, so I do appreciate anyone who is watching this. You can also follow me on any of my social media platforms or somewhere on this screen here. But let's go ahead and get into this review. Now, for me, I love Disney movies, of course. I think like pretty much everybody. Born in 1998, so this is one of those movies. It came out a few years before I was born, of course, so I just grew up loving this movie, watching it. They had a couple re-releases when I was a little kid that I went to go see this. Just one of those movies that I've always had in my life. I just really adore that original animated film. One of my favorite animated movies of all time, definitely for sure. Now, when it comes to the 2019 version, I did go to see it in the theater at the time, I think with my grandma and my aunt, and it did make a lot of money, that movie, but I personally didn't really care for it. It was literally just a shot-for-shot remake of the original, so for me, I was like, this just is like a lesser version of that one. If I want to watch this story, I can just go watch that. So I've never seen it other than the time I saw it at the theaters. And I do have more of an appreciation over time with it because there's kids that saw it at the time. That was probably their version of The Lion King that they enjoy maybe watching more. But for me, I just thought they didn't really do the animal expressions as well. Also in the 2019 version, where at times it was just distracting. You're seeing these very realistic looking lions. And I just didn't connect with it emotionally like you do the animated version, where you can just flesh out those emotions more, give more of that expression to the face, as I was saying. So just a little lukewarm, I guess, to be kind overall about the 2019 version. So going into this, one thing I was more interested in was the fact that this is an original story. You are going back. It has that prequel quality to it that I don't really like as well a lot of the times because there's so much predictability with that when you're following main characters that you know their fate already going into it. So many prequels had that issue, but I was, again, interested in the fact this is an original story and just everything to come with that. And if you do not know or still unaware, this is basically the journey of Mufasa, following him as a young cub, how he becomes basically orphan, stranded from his parents, and his journey finding Scar, who goes by Taka in this movie, and their journey becoming brothers, and where their story leads as we get into leading up into the original story of The Lion King, where they start to have more differences and where that separation begins with them. That's pretty much the main story of this movie, with a couple other little things along the way that are added in here. There was a fair amount of stuff to enjoy with this movie. I thought the CGI, the look of everything, I thought the world was more fleshed out. I was definitely a little more engaged emotionally, the fact that this was an original story, and I think they did a better job as well on expressing the faces of the animals in this. I thought the story is pretty interesting, even though, as I mentioned, with it being a prequel, there's a lot of predictability with it that you just wouldn't have if you didn't know the fate of these characters. Like there's danger and peril that they're in, where you're just like, oh man, this is really cool and engaging visually, but you just know in the back of your head, oh, well, I know where this character is going to be, so this isn't really all that dangerous, or doesn't have as much stakes as it could have. And I think the movie does falter a lot throughout with that aspect being there, but still pretty engaging throughout. And I thought some of the different landscapes you go to, there's this really snowy part of the world that they're in, and then there's the traditional part we usually see in The Lion King near Pride Rock, and just you have like luscious green landscapes, and you have barren, drought-ridden land. I thought they did a nice job of giving you a lot of stuff visually to satisfy your appetite if that's one of your things that you really enjoy. With the music in this movie, I will say it's kind of a disappointment. Lin-Manuel Miranda, very known name now, and when he is involved with the music on a movie, you expect certain things. And this movie, to me, it just felt like it could have been a movie without any music at all. Like, the really way I was feeling after it was over was like, it felt like they wrote this movie without any music in it, and then they went to Lin-Manuel Miranda and were like, hey, find parts in this movie where you can put songs in it and then create songs for it and then come back to us and we'll just insert them in this movie. Because it didn't feel like there was any natural songs to happen in this. Like every time a song would happen, it's like, oh, that's kind of out of nowhere, or that just feels like they're just like, okay, this is the time we need to put a song in here. It's been a while since we've had any music in this. And I just thought it didn't really fit the story overall here. Like when you watch the first Lion King movie, the animated version, or even the remake, a lot of the songs are not only catchy and infectious to listen to, but it feels right for the moment, and it just feels much more natural than this movie did. And I just thought for me, I might have been more entertained and enjoyed the movie more overall by the end of it if we had just had the movie be straight up without any musical numbers in it, because the musical numbers itself just aren't that memorable. There was a couple that were kind of catchy, and in the moment I'm like, okay, I'm enjoying these more than others, but especially the first couple ones they did in this movie, it just wasn't really working for me much. It was like, okay, this is probably fun for younger kids. They're probably getting into this a little more than the adults are, but there was just nothing that really stuck here. There was no like huge hit that stood out where I'm like, oh man, this is going to be one that people are playing for months, and is one of those songs that everybody knows about. There doesn't seem to be any music in this that's going to be ingrained in that pop cultural zeitgeist like a Moana that Lin-Manuel Miranda worked on. And it was just a little bit of disappointment there. I do love music in films. I think it's some of the best aspects of certain films, and I just thought here it was just lacking the quality overall with it. And it wasn't like overloaded with songs or musical numbers. There was definitely a pacing with it. They were like, okay, like every 10 to 15 minutes we're going to have a song here in this movie, and it just didn't work for me quite overall, and it definitely lowered my score more than it would have been. And with the story also, I think they do rush a few things here. It does feel like at times that there'll just be like a 5-minute period to go by in this movie, and there's just a lot of shit happening. Like, this isn't really a spoiler or anything, but you have this moment where Mufasa is lost from his family. He discovers Scar, again known as Taka in this movie, and within a 5-minute period, we decide like multiple things that seem like they would take a lot more mulling over and more discussion, more debate. And we get right to the point with this where we're deciding like huge moments within the plot in just a very short period of time, which I just didn't think was set up in the right way. I think that also carries over into how we end up getting to the place we get to with Scar in this movie, where there's a moment where he has his turn. That's kind of a spoiler alert, but I think we all know where Scar's story goes. But they do get to a point in this movie where he has a turn in a certain way, and it just didn't feel earned in that moment. Like, they really do a good job of building up the brotherhood with Mufasa and Scar, or Mufasa and Taka, however you want to say it, in this movie. That was one of my favorite parts of the experience with this movie, was seeing Scar and Mufasa and their brotherhood actually build. And I really did buy that aspect of it. The voice acting in this movie was really well done overall. Aaron Pierre, who's apparently going to be one of the next Green Lanterns, I thought he was really good in this. Kelvin Harrison Jr. as Taka, aka Scar, I thought was also really well done. And then the few other characters they have in here, well, they all fit the voice acting pretty well. That was definitely one of the stronger parts of the movie. It's just when you build up this brotherhood in such a nice way, but then you don't have a really well done lead up into the potential betrayal that could happen, it just feels kind of forced, and like they just had to insert it in the writing because we know where the story goes now. And they didn't come up with a clever enough way to get to the point they were trying to achieve. It felt just a little bit lacking there. So when you get to near the end of this movie, there wasn't as much of that emotional hit. I think seeing Mufasa's rise, it made sense, but it just also felt like one of those things where we know where the story's going now. So there wasn't as much of that build up emotionally inside. You're like, oh man, yeah, this is a great, satisfying moment. You're just more like, okay, this is how it was supposed to go. This was pretty well done just overall. And that's really just my main thoughts with the entire movie. It's pretty well done. Has its negatives about it, but overall, it wasn't a bad watch. I had fun with it, but it's another one that I wouldn't necessarily go back and rush to watch again. I will say it's probably one I will visit again more than the 2019 version, because I haven't seen it since the theaters, and I could also see this movie warming up on me more upon further rewatches. I think it's interesting how they have basically the story with Rafiki in the future telling this story to Simba's daughter Kiara, Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner back as Timon and Pumbaa. It's a visual feast at times, really beautiful to look at, and just overall it's just pretty well done. I wouldn't say it's like fine or average. I think it's a little bit above that, but it's not anything that's still very memorable, though. I think that is the huge thing with it. You still get the aspect of the fact you're watching realistic-looking lions, and it's just a little weird at times. They do a better job with it, though, in this movie, with the expression of that, though. So I liked it better than the last movie, the 2019 one, but overall, I wouldn't necessarily, again, rush back to go see this movie. If I'm in the Lion King mood, I'm going to go watch the original animated classic, or even the second sequel they made, that animated movie. I really enjoyed that movie as well, especially growing up. If you really enjoyed the 2019 version, I think there's a good chance you'll really enjoy this one. The fact that it's original story, I think, is a plus. As I said, the biggest negative is probably the musical aspect of it. I think that is a pretty big disappointment and probably the biggest negative for me overall. Mads Mikkelsen in here as the real antagonist in this movie, I thought was pretty nice, but even with the main antagonists, they are pretty forgettable as I'm thinking about it now. I just watched it last night, and it gets really repetitive overall once you get into going into the second and third act. I think that's another reason why they kind of had this character turn with Scar at a certain point, because it was starting to get just a little okay, they're trying to continually just hunt and until they find Mufasa and Scar, this whole basically cat and mouse game that just gets a little bit overdone, and I wasn't enjoying as much by the end of it. Some really cool action moments though. I do a couple callbacks as well in certain ways to the original movie and to the last movie, but pretty well directed overall. Barry Jenkins, of course, most notably, I believe still at this point, for Moonlight, the movie he directed. It wasn't a specific style with it, but he did a good job with bringing his talents to this movie. But yeah, that's pretty much my main thoughts overall. I'm going to give Mufasa, the Lion King, a 6 out of 10. As I mentioned, if you enjoyed the 2019 version, I would probably still say it'd be good to go check this one out. I think you will enjoy it. If you have kids, I think there is enough to enjoy with this movie. What do you guys think? Are you planning to go see this movie this weekend? I would say overall, I would suggest Sonic 3 over this movie, just as a personal preference. I really did enjoy that movie more. You can go check that review out as well. I just put that up pretty recently. It should be in the description below. If you want to support this channel, leave a like, leave a comment, as I mentioned. What are your thoughts on the Lion King franchise as a whole? Hit the subscribe button as well if you want to support this channel in any way. Again, just a smaller channel here. I just love talking about movies and TV shows, love going to see movies. It's just a passion of mine, and so I just love doing this whenever I'm not working and all that. You can also follow me on any of my social media platforms. It's somewhere on this screen here right now. But that'll be it for now. I got a few more new releases coming out this month. Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. Complete Unknown, starring Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan. And even Baby Girl, I think I'm going to try and go see at some point whenever it gets more of a wider release around where I'm at. And there'll be plenty of more videos also coming up. Again, there's more of my videos in the description down below where you can click on some of those if you're interested. I appreciate everyone who's watching this, and I'll talk to y'all later.